Hey everybody, I'm back and I've got another returning friend. I love this. Another three-peat. This is so great. Welcome back, Maura. I'm so glad you could be here. Thank you for coming by again. It's really great.
I am so happy to be back. Thanks, Steve.
Now, in case folks missed it in your previous 2 episodes, because you were here back for episode 25, one of my real early guests, which I loved with your Reading Rescue Pets. And that program I actually recently just shared with some other people who were super interested in it. Thank you for that. And you were here for episode 63, also fairly a while ago. It seems like it was yesterday, but actually it's a little bit now. And we were talking about the winter games that you did. And that's actually another one that I was talking about. I was talking about the Reading Rescue Pets for younger grades and the winter games for high school. So I love it. You are just filling my timeline and my world with lots of great ideas.
Ooh,
and now you
help.
are back. Yeah. So just in case folks don't remember, where are you? Where are you at? What do you do? How's that all going?
Okay. My name is Maura Madigan, and I am a librarian in Northern Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. And for 10 years, I was an elementary school librarian. And then last year, I transferred to a secondary school, which is grades 7 through 12. It's a huge school. We had, I think, about 3,900 students.
Wow.
And I was lucky to be on a team of 4 librarians, 4
Nice.
full-time librarians.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's got to be amazing. Boy, all the things you can do.
It is great. And it takes a lot of the pressure off when you're transferring to a new school, because I felt like I didn't need to be an expert in everything right away because somebody else would know the answer.
Right. And yeah, that's got to be so awesome to have those people to lean on just as a human resource and also as just a knowledge base for here are things that have gone on. Can you sort of fill me in as we go along? That's great.
Absolutely. And they are, my co-librarians are just amazing. They are such fabulous librarians and just really a delight to work with.
That's awesome. I am so happy for you. I'm so glad that the transfer has gone well and that you've got great people to work with. That's so cool. And you had actually reached out with this idea for this lesson, and I love that you are doing this with students. I think this so makes sense to me. So before we get into the specifics and the details, where did the idea for this come from?
Okay, so it is a unit of lessons on communication. And I will say that I have not done this at the secondary level, though I think it absolutely applies for all students.
Absolutely.
I noticed when I was back working in the elementary school library that a lot of the students, they have such poor communication skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't speak loud enough. They don't speak clearly enough. They have a really hard time having a discussion, taking turns. And often what happened, and I remember this as a teacher also, I would ask a question and the student would answer and they would only look at me. And then I would ask, the same question, another student would answer and they would say the same exact thing. And I said, well, didn't you just hear that, so-and-so said that same exact answer? So they clearly were not listening to each other. So I thought, you know what, we're going to do some lessons on this. And I developed a series of lessons that built upon each other and kind of focused on mainly speaking and listening. And although it might not scream library, these units, honestly, I think they apply all over. And it does end with a video book review of a book. So if you're like, this is not library enough, just you wait.
Yeah. And there's tons of things you could do to tie in speaking and communicating and listening in the library. And I love that you are bringing it into the library, because your supposition that some people are going to be like, wait, how does this fit? That to me perfectly says why it needs to be in the library, because we are such a hub of information that needs to be communicated. And we talk about all the information literacies, and we don't often talk about the communication literacy side of things, which is so relevant inside of information literacy. So I love that you're bringing this into the library.
Also, in the show notes, I lay out each of the lessons very clearly. I talk about the different materials that you'll need, but I also list the relevant AASL standards for learners. So there are actually standards that fit each of these lessons.
Yeah, this is a great document you put together. Thank you for doing this.
You are welcome.
I have been flipping through it back and forth, and it's just so amazing, like how you really have not just linked it to the standards, but you are making it very clear and how relevant this is to what we do in our library spaces. It's so great.
So I will tell you that it's set out as 7 lessons. You don't necessarily have to do it as 7 lessons. Each lesson is about 30 minutes long, but you could modify that to suit your particular schedule and time frame. And there are built-in supports for multilingual learners and also other students who might need other support. So I use a lot of visuals in the graphic organizers and just lots of ways, like sometimes sentence stems and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first lesson is basically the introduction, and we start off with a discussion on like, what is communication? What does that mean? What are some examples? And I kind of write down what the students were saying, and we would talk about what are some, how does communication vary depending on like the setting, where you
Yes.
are, the audience,
Mm-hmm.
right? How if you're talking with just one person, that's going to be much different than if you're talking with 4 people or if you're
Mm-hmm.
talking with a whole class.
Absolutely. And I could see that being a great sort of tie-in or jumping off point for conversations in language arts. If you're looking at, dialogue or the way that different texts are written, because just like when you speak to different audiences, you speak in different ways. When you write for different audiences, you write different ways. And so let's make that connection and think about, oh yeah, if I was writing to my parents, I would probably, or if I'm talking to my parents, I'm probably going to speak differently than if I'm writing or talking to a friend of mine and just sending them a quick note. So I love just right off the bat, starting with that basic, but so important and so relevant element. It's great.
Yep. And also in that first lesson, I have them do like a pre-assessment, a self-reflection on how they think they are, or, what they think of their current communication skills. Like,
Okay.
what do they think they're good at? What do they think they need to maybe become a little bit better at?
Mm-hmm.
And built into each lesson, there is either an exit ticket or a reflection of some sort. And I collect them each time. And then at the end, I give them back so they can kind of look and see and reflect on how much they've grown throughout the series of lessons.
Love it. That's so important. I love anytime we can build reflection in. And there is literally a folder that you have put together full of these different elements that you are sharing out, which is so great. It's got the overall, but it's also got, I'm looking at the pre-assessments, and I love this communicator pre-assessment sheet. It's very straightforward. It's very simple for the students to go through. And yet I can see, I am imagining my students going through this, and I can already picture so many of them marking down, usually I'm very good at these things and never am I bad at these things. And then having the conversation and them reevaluating and reflecting a little bit and going, maybe I need to adjust some of my answers a little bit.
Right. I also reassure them that no one is going to see these except for me. And honestly, I don't really look at them.
Yeah.
Right. It's just for them. So that
Right.
there's no reason to be honest. It's not tied to any grade either.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I should say that I've done this with grades 4 and 5, just
Mm-hmm.
because my elementary school only went through grade 5.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you could definitely use these lessons probably through high school. And you could also use it with younger grades.
Absolutely.
It's very adaptable.
Yeah, I can totally see. I taught an argument and debate class for a while, and this would absolutely 100% fit with when they're going to be presenting their arguments to the audience. Like, these are things we should be thinking about. I love this.
All right. So that's lesson 1.
Mm-hmm.
Lesson 2 is partner speaking and listening. So I pair them with somebody else. Usually I do all of the pairings and I don't let them pick. It saves time, it saves hurt feelings, and it saves them from being with somebody they might fool around with, right?
Mm-hmm. And how, when they get with their friends, how carefully are they going to be paying attention to their communication skills with a friend? I'm going to guess very little, because they're going to be more concerned with doing the communicating. And we may not want them doing that as the lesson's going on.
Usually I'm pretty mindful of pairing a multilingual learner with somebody who is fluent in English, but also speaks their home language, because that usually helps with the comfort level.
Yeah.
And I do encourage them to speak in English, but that they have that home language for support as needed, right? Because it's not, the focus isn't on how well can you speak and listen in English. It's, the skills of speaking and listening in general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we also talk about, what does it look like and sound like when you're actually listening to somebody? And I'll give good examples and bad examples. And, so I'll give an example of, when somebody, and usually I'll pull a kid up to the front and say, okay, you speak to me. And then I'll kind of turn away or, look around the room or look down or fidget. And I'll say, okay, what do you notice? Did you think I was a good listener? And, they're always like, no, you were looking around and all that stuff and you weren't paying attention. And I talk about how that makes the speaker feel. If you clearly can tell that the person you're talking with or talking to is not paying any attention to you, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good.
Absolutely.
And then, I just talk about the different ways that we can show someone we're listening to them without interrupting them, right? So making eye contact. And I also tell them this tip that, some people are uncomfortable looking other people directly in the eyes, right? That's normal. And if you are one of those people, you can look at the person's nose. They won't know that you're not looking them in the eye. They get the same validation, like, okay, this person is paying attention, but it takes some of the pressure off.
I like that. There's also sometimes a cultural issue of, making eye contact. We have a very large Asian population in my school, and when I first started, it was very difficult for me to adjust to the fact that a lot of my Asian students had been brought up to not look an adult in the eye. And so it was very disconcerting for me at first to work with that. And I had to adjust my thinking. But I love that you're taking that moment to say, like, there are, things that we tend to do that are considered good listening skills. And here are some almost workarounds or some hacks. If you have found that it's difficult for you to do this, you might do that instead. And I mean, it's also probably a great opportunity, just thinking it through, to maybe even mention, like, in some cultures, there are different expectations. And this is one that we have in our culture, but maybe other cultures have different expectations. And that's something for us to be aware of when we're communicating too, especially in our global society that we have built, where we, can talk to people literally around the world with a couple pushes of a button. So, man. Circles inside circles here. Sorry.
I know. That's okay. So, all right. So I also talk about how, what are some ways that we can show that we're listening other than looking at them, but, having your body facing in their direction, kind of doing, like shaking your head, like nodding, doing the, like just what you're doing right now, Steve. You're going, right? Just these kind of, what are they called? Verbal pause.
Yeah, verbal cues or verbal pauses.
Okay, verbal feedback maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I tell them, when you're listening, kind of pay attention to what your body is doing. If you're fidgeting or you're tapping or something, try to stop doing that. Okay, and then I will say, okay, I will designate one of the students as partner A and one as partner B. Just do it because it's much faster than having them figure it out.
Right.
And what I tell them is, partner A is going to speak first and partner B is going to be the listener. Partner A, I will give you a topic. I give them, 10 to 30 seconds of think time to think about what they're going to say.
Okay.
And then I'll hit a chime. I usually have one of those little chimes. You could do whatever, but to indicate, okay, it's time to start talking. And then they'll start talking. And I do very easy conversation topics like foods and drinks that you like, or foods and drinks that you don't like, or, maybe your favorite TV shows or video games or movies, right? Something that they don't really have to think about.
Right.
And nothing that's going to be potentially embarrassing.
Sure.
Now, what I do tell them is, partner B, you are going to get a different topic. This prevents them from spending the time thinking about what they're going to say.
I like that. That's
right?
Good thinking.
Because a lot of times, and honestly, I have to say that listening is a skill that I still am working on as an adult, right? Especially in a high stress situation, right? You're in a conversation, you're like, I'm going to have to speak next. In your mind, part of your brain is thinking about, what am I going to say? And you're missing what the person is saying.
Absolutely.
So I tell them, you're going to have a completely different topic. So don't even try and think about what you're going to say because it's not going to be relevant. I want you to focus everything on listening and remembering what the person says. right? So there's an
Okay.
accountability piece. So I let them talk for, 1 to 2 minutes, hit the chime, tell them, okay, finish your sentence, partner A, and then we go around the room and partner B has to share at least one thing they remember.
Okay.
And then we swap. I give partner B their, topic, give them think time and repeat. And at the end, I'll share out. I'll say, okay, we'll do the same thing. And then I'll say, as a whole class, what did you think of this activity?
Mm-hmm.
Most kids really like it.
Hmm.
They really find it helpful. Then I give out an exit ticket, and it's just very quick, like circle the things you think you got better at and something that you think you still need to work on.
Mm-hmm. I
And
love that you are giving them that pause. You give them the topic and then give them a pause to think sometimes, or give them a little bit of time to think, because sometimes we just expect them to be able to jump in. Like we give them a task and we know what we would do. And so I'm speaking for myself. I can't speak for anybody else. I know that in the past, I have given my students tasks and been like, I know how this should go. So they should be able to just dive right in. And it took me a while to figure out, no, they need that little bit of reflection time, even if it's going to be like reading out loud. If they know they're going to have to read out loud, giving them a couple of seconds to at least preview or scan or skim so that they're not put on the spot with something that they're not 100% comfortable with, and building in that little bit of reflection time or that little bit of pre-planning for them can make such a huge difference, especially for those students who, like, especially in a situation like this where we have students we know who maybe aren't as comfortable speaking. Giving them that little bit of pre-planning time can make all the difference between how anxious they're going to get inside. And so I love that you're building in that little anxiety reducer moment to have the conversational thought in their head and get some ideas going. And I love that you make them focus on, you're going to get a different topic, so just listen. Mm-hmm. All you got to do. Like just keeping it very straightforward and very simple, but that's so important for all of our students. And I know you said you were using this with younger students and then it could be used with older students. I think this absolutely should be used with older students, because I've got so many kids in the middle school that I am already picturing how I'm going to implement this with some of my students, with some of my classes, because there are kids who cannot have a one-on-one conversation in the middle school with their peers, with me, with other adults. So I love this. Sorry. I keep getting very excited by this because there's so many options and possibilities here.
I'm glad. I love to hear it. Okay. So the next lesson is, now we move on to small group speaking and listening. And this is basically how to have a small group discussion.
Okay.
And I assign them, ideally it's a group of 4, but if you have uneven numbers, you could do one group of 5. And for this one, you need, I call them talking chips. I think they could be like poker chips or bingo chips. They sell them. There's a million different kinds on Amazon. They're pretty cheap, but you want to make sure that you have a different color for each student in the group. In each group.
Okay.
And each student needs to have 2. You could do it as 3 as well, but I did it 2 at first just because it's quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you want to talk about how do you have a discussion in a group. Now, the talking chips kind of forces them to contribute to the conversation, and it forces them to take turns, right? Because we all know you have those students who dominate. Right? The over participators. I am an over participator. I do have to tell myself when I'm at like PD or whatever, all right, I don't have to answer every question. Like they can hear another voice. But you do have those students who are, for whatever reason, just really reluctant to participate. So the talking chips are a visual cue for both them and me as to how much they're participating.
I love that.
And this is something that I used back when I used to do Socratic seminars as a teacher.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So as soon as you said...
So I explain how it works. And then I say, so basically it works kind of like a talking stick, only if you've got the talking stick, you're the only one that can talk at your table. So each time a student wants to say something, they have to put their talking chip in the middle. And the next person is not allowed to start talking until that first person finishes.
Okay.
Way they can indicate that, like, hey, I want to go next, is they just put like a finger up or a hand up or something.
Okay.
And then, that person would go next. Whoever puts their finger up first in the group goes next. And for students who really, and once you've used both of your talking chips, you can't talk anymore. And it's hilarious because our over participators, it drives them crazy because they just want to say something else and they can't. And a lot of times after everybody's used their talking chips, they're like, Mrs. Madigan, can I talk now? And I'm like, okay, yes. Yeah, everyone's gone. All right, you can say your last words. And I will tell, like, I also give students who are a little bit on the shyer side, like kind of hacks on how you can add to a conversation if you feel like you're a little bit nervous. So if somebody says something that you agree with, you can say, I agree with you because blah, blah, blah. Right? You can't just say, I agree or I disagree. You need to say why.
Right.
But it's a lot easier to build upon what somebody else says than perhaps, if you haven't come up with an idea of your own.
Absolutely. And I can imagine this would be a great opportunity to talk to them a little bit about like note taking during conversation, like just jotting down like what's an important point somebody said, or what's a thing that you want to say, but they're still speaking. So you're not going to interrupt, but you don't want to forget your point. Like just quick little words or phrases to help trigger their memory when it is their turn to talk again.
That's a good idea, Steve. I did not think about that. I'd use this as it's pretty quick because we do 2 rotations and it's only 30 minutes. But certainly if you had a longer period of time, giving them the opportunity to have like a piece of paper and a pencil and jot down notes would be really helpful. So what I do is I'll give them topics that are relevant to them. Like, so some ones that have been very popular are, should we build an in-ground pool on the field? and you can't just say yes or no. You need to have reasons why. And I have them like, okay, think about all the reasons why this would be a good thing and all the potential problems. Or I'll say, should we move from a 5-day school week to a 4-day school week with longer hours? Or should, another one is, should we move to a year-round school? So same thing like with the partners, I'll give them a little bit of think time first, and then I'll hit the chime, and whoever wants to start talking puts their chip in the middle and starts talking.
I love that too. Like that brainstorming session is another opportunity. So I was literally just talking to somebody this morning about this argument debate class that I used to teach. And it's stuck in my head a little bit, but hearing you talking about how you give them a topic and give them some time to think before they're going to speak, like another opportunity in my brain for them to have that piece of paper and that pen and just jot down like, first reaction, like yes or no, do you agree or do you disagree? And like just some quick pros and cons. And that way, as they get to talk, as they get to that point in the conversation, like they can be adding thoughts, adding ideas, crossing stuff out. Somebody already talked about this. Do I want to go back to it? Did they miss an important idea? Sorry, I'm blowing this out in directions and it's going to take more time and more effort, but I love all the elements that are incorporated into this. And I apologize. I interrupted. You were just about to say something else.
It's okay. It's okay. No worries. So I do also circulate while they're talking and I'll look and I'll see. So if there's like if everyone has used one and maybe somebody's on their second one and there's a person who hasn't used either, I'll kind of say, okay, I noticed you haven't used either talking chip. You got to get on it, because I said you can't use them the last 2 in a row. I kind of tell them there needs to be somebody in between.
Okay. I like that.
So this I don't time. Most groups they're going at about the same time. And, if there is one group that's very far behind, I'll say, okay, guys, you need to wrap up this conversation because, all the other groups are finished. And then after we do a second round, the second round, they're much better at. It goes much more smoothly because they know the system then. And I'll say, hey, if you were one of the people who had 2 of your talking chips close to the end, I want you to make an effort to really be one of the first ones to talk, like the first or second person to talk in this conversation.
Totally makes sense. Yeah.
And again, I'm mindful of my groupings. I try to definitely put multilingual learners with somebody who speaks their home language. I've also done this. I've mixed it up in different ways where I've done like multilingual learners with students, like all Spanish speakers. And because I often would have students who just came to the country who have like zero English.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if you all want to speak in Spanish, that is absolutely fine.
Love that.
So they've done that.
Yeah.
Then we share out again at the end. Also, sorry, I should say, after they have the first discussion, I'll say, okay, raise your hand. How many people think, yes, we should do this? How many people think, no, we should do this? And then I'll take a few answers like, why? Why would this be a good idea? Why wouldn't this be a good idea?
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of get to share their ideas with the whole group. And then they do the exit ticket.
Love that.
Okay, next lesson after that, now we move to whole class communication. And this is basically presentation skills
Mm-hmm.
where I demonstrate, I'll stand in the front of the room and I'll give a bad example, like looking down at the floor, mumbling, punching my shoulders, or like turned away, that kind of thing. And then I'll give a good example and have them point out, what do you notice? When we talk about how there's a difference between projecting your voice and screaming.
Yes.
And we kind of do try, like we practice a little bit of breathing exercises to kind of get that, how do you project your voice? And then I have all the students move to the back of the room, preferably sitting, but if that's too much of a pain, they can just stand. And I go to the back of the room also. And then I say, okay, who wants to go first? And there's always somebody who will volunteer. And if not, pick someone who has a lot of, swagger.
Mm-hmm. We've always got those students, who they are, that you can count on to fulfill the assignment.
And then they just basically have to say something very simple. My name is, and usually I do like, I like ice cream or I don't like ice cream.
Okay.
And they have to say it loud enough that we can hear them in the back of the room and clearly enough. And if they can't, the audience indicates that they can't hear them by holding their hand up.
Okay.
So that's a visual reminder. If I agree that I also couldn't hear them, I will say, okay, can you try that again? However, I don't make them do it more than 3 times in a row because that just gets to be kind of cruel.
Yeah.
And I think, all right, we're going to try it another time. In this case, I have had 1 or 2 students who refuse to go up. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to make you.
Yeah.
Like kids with like severe social anxiety, I'm not going to force them to do that.
No, we don't want to reinforce the anxiety, but again, that's something that by this point, hopefully we know the students enough that we can kind of get a sense of where they're at with that and have that, in our back pocket, knowing like, okay, this is a kid that I'm not going to push too hard to do this or make them repeat it too many times.
Right. And if there's time, sometimes I've done it just that. And then other times I'll have like the audience can ask 1 or 2 questions like, what kind of ice cream is your favorite? I mean, it's very repetitive, but it's kind of low stakes because they're not really having to think about a lot of content. It's more like how you're saying it than what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we talk about it. They do another exit ticket. So you could, if you wanted to, you could just do those 4 lessons as a unit. If you wanted to then move on, you would move into the video presentation, right? Because this is another way, and it's a different type of communication, another mode, and it requires different skills.
Absolutely.
And, we talk about the differences between, speaking to a person and speaking on a video. I don't love video presentations.
Okay.
This is something, whenever I've seen myself on video, I'm like, gosh, I'm blinking up a storm, or I feel like I'm like a bobblehead, right? Put me in front, I will present at any conference in a live audience and I am absolutely fine.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm videotaped and if I have to videotape myself, like I've had to do this for my job before, creating videos for students, especially during the pandemic. I'll have to do them like 20 times.
Yeah.
Right. So this is definitely something that, you could be a great public speaker, but once you get on video, it's a little more challenging.
And I would love to see, and there's the obverse of that too, because I bet that so many of our students are good at talking to a camera because they do videos at home. Like I've seen kids go into, we recorded their debates for argument debate, and some of the kids would just lock right into that camera, and they have clearly done this a million times. But when you ask them to talk to other human beings, they don't have that same set of skills. So I would love to see that side by side sort of comparison of their skills. But I'm totally there with you. Like when it comes to making the video, it's different skills. And there's also that element of when you're presenting, you're just doing it and you're just putting what you're putting out into the world, and it's out there and you can't take it back and you can't redo it. Like it is what it is. And videos, I always get so in my head about, well, that wasn't quite right, let me do it again. And I end up doing like 20 takes to do something that should be like, hi everybody. No, wait, I didn't like that. Let me try it again. Hi everybody. No, that's not it. So totally there with you.
Exactly. All right. So the first video lesson is talking about, the different skills that you need when you're recording a video. And then I have them find a library book that they have read and liked.
Okay.
And it could be something they read that year or like 3 years ago. I mean, I don't care. The book does not matter.
Yeah.
And then I have them get the book. And usually what I'll do is I'll check it out to them, but then keep it in the library, because if I send it back to class with them, it probably wouldn't make its way back when we need it the following week.
Yep.
And I have a very simple script available. Now, this is something that, you could go more in depth. If you wanted to make this a bigger project, you could certainly have them, write a detailed reason of why they're recommending this book. But I wanted to keep it simple and low stakes. And so I had like sentence stems, and I had word banks that multilingual learners could use to make it extra simple. So basically, a template that said, they had to fill in the title, the author, and, something like, I like this book because it is scary, or this book is funny, or this book is, sweet or exciting, something about the book.
I like that.
And then I let them play around with actually videotaping. I had a class set of iPads, so we did iPads. And they always get goofy the first time that they're using the iPad. So I let them play around the first day. So they get their goofiness out. And then they practice, I pair them up with somebody. So it's partners, and they take turns. Well, they fill out the script, and then they practice videotaping, and then they watch it. And the partner will give them feedback.
Okay. I like that.
On, I think, you were not, you mumbled a little bit here, or you're fidgeting, you're moving all around. You got to try and like calm yourself down. And then they can redo it until, try it a couple of times. I also make them, even if they were really happy with it, they need to delete them all. Right. And that way, next time, because I also would have a lot of classes using the same iPad.
Sure. Okay.
But that way you don't end up with like a million videos on the camera roll.
Right. No, that totally makes sense. Okay. I'm with you.
And then I would collect their scripts and their books and save them for the next class. Now, the next class is when they actually are going to do their record.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So the first day is just practice.
Gotcha. Okay. Totally makes sense.
The next day, now this is pretty important, especially if you don't have a huge library. But even if you do, you want to try and spread them out as much as possible. Because you don't want to otherwise you can hear other students talking in the background of your video. Yeah.
That's always the challenge. And my middle school we don't have a lot of space, and we've got it's a multimedia class. And every time the multimedia class is meeting, you can tell, because there's students up and down the hallways, like all over the school with their Chromebooks talking into the cameras. And it's like, good that you are spacing out so we can, hear what you are saying and not somebody else. Not so much that you are outside of a classroom that's trying to take a test and you are talking to your computer at full volume, but issues, of space and time are things that we will never be able to solve. So.
Right. And it's another way or opportunity to say, okay, what volume is appropriate where we can hear you, but you're not so loud that other people can hear you in their videos.
And I'll tell you, the middle schoolers especially, and the high schoolers to an extent, volume control, not their strength. So I love this as an opportunity to practice that volume control.
Right. So then the next lesson is I would hand back their scripts, hand back the books, and, They get with their partners and they film until they're ready. I mean, not ready, but until they're happy with what they've done.
Okay.
And, I tell them, make sure that you deleted everything. Well, what I say is if you film it and watch it and want to do it again, delete it right away, because
Totally makes
otherwise
sense.
you might not remember, which is the good one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you, as the librarian, want to decide, like, how are you gonna have the students share these with you, right? What I did was I would just airdrop them all onto one iPad,
Okay.
and then I would just connect that to show it the following week.
Mm-hmm.
If I was using, students were using Chromebooks, I would probably have them share it with me in their Google Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I could put them all in one place to make it easier to screen them the following week. Because that's ultimately what we want to celebrate by having you share your video book review with the class.
Absolutely. And what a great opportunity there to be able to say, well, I'm jumping a little bit ahead, so I'm going to back off of that moment and say, once they have had that opportunity to put their videos together and share them with you, then the last element, they go to a screening lesson, right? Or a screening
right.
opportunity,
So then
I guess.
the final lesson is when I show all the videos, and these videos are short, right? So it doesn't usually take that long.
Yeah.
And then I hand back all of their pre-assessments, their exit tickets, and have them look back on those. And then I give them a summative self-reflection for them to complete.
Love it.
Because I don't assign grades, I don't really need these. So
Mm-hmm.
I've done lots of different things in the past. I've had some teachers who are like, oh, that's awesome. I will use that as a grade, to inform my grading.
Mm-hmm.
For teachers who didn't want it, I would just let the students keep it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanted to kind of revisit these lessons the following year, you might hold on to it, right?
Yeah.
And give it back the following year and say, hey, remember last year we worked on this? Look and see where you felt you ended up, in your skills development.
Mm-hmm. And what a great opportunity if you've got students for multiple years to be able to hang on to those self-assessments and even the videos and show them to the students several years later and say, okay, it's been a while. Let's look back and see where you were and now where do you think you are now and what have you learned? What's different? If you were doing it again, what might you change? There's so many possibilities there for them to be able to have that look back because you've preserved these artifacts of what they've done.
Right.
Man.
I realized I forgot to mention one support. So I have a sheet and it's included in the show notes folder that's visuals. And it's like eye contact, speak loudly, clearly. And that is, I would just put one of those sheets on each table during the partner talk, partner activity, and the small group activity, sort of as a visual reminder of what skills they wanted to focus on.
I love that. And it would be great for when they're working on their videos too, as a reminder, because sometimes they don't always make the transition of, there are certain skills that are going to carry over from speaking to video making. And some of them are, speak loudly, speak slowly, speak clearly. So absolutely a good opportunity for them to have that visual reminder as well. And I'm thinking about too, the videos, like what a cool thing if you had like a way to say, okay, who would be willing to share these so that other students in other classes could see them. And you could even build like a little YouTube channel for your library of student reviews. Like here's a playlist of different, and just title them with the book. And that way, if kids want to know about a book, see what your peers had to say about it. It's not just me telling you, see what other people had to say too.
Definitely. And if you do a morning news show in elementary school, this could be something that you would share. Obviously, you would get the students' approval first. And, you might also need parental approval. I'm not quite sure, depending on what your county rules are.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely different ways that this could be used. And, in that case, you might want to do something a little bit more elaborate. But it could be something just like a simple template that the student fills in.
And they don't necessarily have to be super long or super complex. Like if it's just I felt strongly about this book, you should check it out. That sometimes is enough to get kids into picking something up and giving it a shot. So there's so many great options and possibilities and elements with this. I love it. Boy. So you've done this in the past with younger students. You're going to try it out with some older students. Are there any things that if somebody's going to kind of be stepping into this for the first time that they might want to have front of mind as they're getting ready to try this out?
Probably try it with one grade level first.
Okay.
Then to try to do it with everybody.
That makes sense. I can see that would definitely be a good chance to just get your feet wet, get a sense of it before you try and roll it out to other groups.
I think I also would not do it first thing at the beginning of the year. Especially if classes tend to change, right? So you do need sort of a familiarity and a comfort level between students. And often that class community or camaraderie doesn't happen right away. Right? So most students are much more willing to take chances and share and talk if they feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
In the environment. And that is more likely to happen later in the year or maybe even mid-year.
That totally makes sense. Yeah. No, I can totally see that. So having done this in the past with the students, what kind of feedback have they had, or what kind of have they shared any reflections about what they've done when you've done it with the 4-5s?
They love it. They love their favorite is the small group discussion.
Interesting.
I had fourth grade classes who were saying, hey, when are we going to do that again? Can we do that again? They really liked it.
I love that. Have you heard anything from the teachers after they've done this about any skills they're seeing come back into the classroom?
All right, I'm going to be honest, not really.
Okay. Hey, that's okay. We don't always get that feedback that would be nice to have, even though there are things going on. So
I didn't really seek it out. But I did notice a change in the library because I saw every class every week. So, and I got to know these kids because, I would have them year after year. So I definitely noticed improvements, in individual students, but also in discussions and less students just answering questions to me, more, talking to the room rather than just talking to me.
That's awesome. I love when we can see the effects of the lessons that we are implementing, because sometimes you throw stuff out there and you don't always get the opportunity to see how it works. In the library, I think that's less true. In the classroom, I think it happens a fair amount because you do a unit and then you move on to the next unit. In the library, at least we're trying to show them stuff they're going to be using and bringing back. But I love this as something that is so fundamental, and it's one of those things that I think too many educators assume that students are going to have some of these basic communication skills, and they are growing up in a time when you don't necessarily have to talk to people.
They don't talk to each other. Oh my goodness. They don't talk on the phone. They barely talk when they're hanging out even. Because they'll all
text
on
each
their
other
phones.
sitting next to each other. Yeah.
Yes,
I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I think this is such a wonderful opportunity for them to get some practice with a skill that that we may take for granted, that they just have never had the need to develop. So I love it. I love that you're bringing this to your students. It's so great, man. So I think we're at the point where we're going to take our 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Yay!
What's got your reading radar pinging these days?
All right, I'm going to tell you about a series that was recommended to me by Mike von Bombekiem, one of my co-librarians.
All right.
And I have been recommending this series to everybody. Okay. I've recommended it to my doctor. I've recommended it to, at my daughter's wedding reception, to one of her 20-year-old, guy friends.
Okay. All right. I love that.
When people know you're a librarian, they're like, can you recommend any good books? I get asked that all the time. Or I'm in probably the minority. I know I'm in the minority of people who bring books to doctors' offices, right? Because you're always sitting around having to wait. And every time, either the doctor or the assistant or somebody would be like, oh, wow, what are you reading? Anywho, so the first book in the series is called Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. And it is by Heather Fawcett. And it is, I think it's considered a cozy fantasy. That's the section it was in my Barnes & Noble. I will preface this by saying I am not a lover of fantasy nor historical fiction books. Those are not my go-to genres, but this is both of those genres.
Okay.
So the main character, Emily Wilde, is a 30-year-old scientist. She's a Cambridge, England professor of dryadology, which is not a real thing because it is the study of fairies.
Okay.
So Emily or Dr. Wilde is going to Lochland to study the hidden ones.
Okay.
Which are the fairies of Lochland, which the description is basically it's like Iceland. The names, the people's names, the descriptions, it's all Iceland.
Okay.
So I went to Iceland over spring break. So Mike was like, "Oh, you have to read this. You're going to love this book. Read this book." And so she goes there, and it's technically like a journal, but it reads more just like a first-person narrative.
Okay.
And her nemesis is Dr. Wendell Bambleby, who is this really handsome, like, celebrity scientist, right?
Okay.
And she is just frustrated because everybody's fawning all over him all the time. And she's convinced that he's faked all of his research.
Okay.
In my mind, I picture him as Carrie Elwes from like The Princess Bride, like the main character. Like that's what he looks like in my mind. But he follows her to Lochland and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" So I'm not going to give away too much, but there are currently 3 books in the series. I read them in quick succession.
Okay.
And they pick the second one picks up where the first one left off.
Okay.
And there's not a lot of, like a lot of books in series, they kind of try to catch you up in case you didn't read the previous books. This doesn't really do that. Which I like. I like that. I'm like, I know that already. Okay. Why are you telling me this?
Yeah.
But I read them in quick succession. And then, I had this like sadness. When you finish a really, really awesome book that you loved that just you couldn't put down.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, it's done. I'm so sad. And then I looked and 2 more are coming out. I'm so excited. Yay. I know. So book 4 is coming out in January.
Okay.
And I cannot wait. So this book, it's really weird, this series. It's like, it's exciting. It's interesting. The characters are really well depicted, but also it's kind of a very comforting read. I don't know if that's like the exact best thing to say, but there's something just oddly comforting about these books.
Yeah. I've been delving into the cozy fantasy realm a little bit because there's something very, like you said, comforting, warm, fuzzy about so many of these stories. And some of them have high stakes, but they're mostly tend to be lower stakes sort of stories. And it's just with the state of the world, having a story that's just going to wrap you like a warm blanket is real nice to have. Mm-hmm. So I have heard this title come up before, and I'm definitely going to have to check this out because this sounds great. I love it.
And they're beautiful. Like the covers have beautiful illustrations and stuff. And so they're just really nice books.
Awesome. Man, I love it. Thank you. Thank you for the great book recommendation. Thank you for bringing this unit that is just amazing. That really is something that our students need. Like they absolutely desperately need this. And I don't know, fingers crossed, our state is going to be doing a cell phone ban this coming year, bell-to-bell cell phone ban. And so I'm hoping that our students are going to start to interact a little more, but giving them a head start by giving them some specifics of here's how you communicate with other human beings, I think that is so valuable. And even if you go back 20 years before they're all in their cell phones, I still think this is something that's valuable for students because not all of them necessarily have a lot of opportunities to communicate with people just generally. Like they may not have a lot of people in their lives. So this really does provide them with a little bit of a runway. So thank you so much for bringing it. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you coming back for the 3rd time. Awesome and outstanding. I love it. And we're going to have you back again sometime. So we're going to figure out what that'll be about. But this is great. And I can't wait to hear how this goes with your high school students. So definitely be sure to bring that information back because I can see this going over like gangbusters. I think this is going to be great.
Sounds great. Thank you, Steve. It was awesome chatting with you again.